This is Amelia and Sarah's Polish Immigrants in the United States project.
How many immigrants came to the United States from Poland? The post-Civil War years showed a huge increase in Polish immigration to the United States. By 1900, there was about 383,407 Polish immigrants living in America. The 1910 census of the United States showed that at the time there was about 900,000 Polish-speaking immigrants in the United States. At this time, Poland was separated into three territorial divisions: Prussia, modern-day Germany, Russia, and, and Austria-Hungary. Immigrants came from all three provinces, but between 1901 and 1914, 596,950 Poles came from the Russian Empire part of Poland. Between 1890 and 1914, there was a decrease in immigrants from the Galicia, or Austria-Hungarian territory of Poland. The reason for most of the immigrants coming from the Russian territory was that the Polish people living in the Russian territory were horribly treated and tried to find any way out of the country to have better lives. Where did the Polish immigrants settle? When Polish immigrants came to America, they mostly settled in the northeast and midwest parts of the United States. The Poles settled in both large cities and small towns, and they settled in areas where there were already multiple Polish immigrants. In the northeast, they settled in Buffalo, New York City, and Greenpoint, Brooklyn, New York. They settled in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and in small Massachusetts towns such as Chicopee and Indian Orchard. In the Midwest, most Polish immigrants settled in Chicago, Illinois. Others settled in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and in Detroit and Hamtramck, Michigan. What occupations did Polish immigrants have? When Polish immigrants came to America, they were looking for farm work because it was something they were specialized in due to mostly doing farm work back in Poland. Many were disappointed when they realized that America was mostly an industrial country. In order to create a living for themselves, they were forced to work in mills and factories. The Polish immigrants mostly worked in the industries of steel mills, coal mines, meat packing, oil refineries, and sewing clothes. The Polish immigrants were one of the lowest paid ethnic groups in the United States. They were very hardworking and worked a 10-hour workday, but only had an annual income of about $325. Even though they barely made enough money to live comfortably in America, the Polish immigrants regularly sent their savings back to Poland to care for their families and farms. What customs and traditions did the Polish bring in practice in the United States? The most important tradition that the Polish immigrants brought to America with them is Vigilia, the traditional Christmas Eve dinner. Vigilia begins when the first star appears in the sky and consists of a 12-course dinner. The 12 courses are all meatless, and some of the courses are fish, cabbage with beans, red borscht, 3 or 4 kinds of pierogi, and mushroom soup. Vigilia always begins with the breaking of a płatek, which is a thin wafer that is broken as good wishes are exchanged for the new year. After the breaking of the płatek, a prayer is always said, then dinner may begin. The dinner table must also be set up a certain way. There must be an even amount of people at the table for good luck in the new year. There is always an empty place for a stranger that may pass by. Also, there must be hay placed under the white tablecloth to represent the poverty that Jesus was born into. After dinner, traditional Polish Christmas carols are sung and presents are opened. At midnight, everyone goes to church for midnight mass to welcome the baby Jesus.
Why did Polish immigrants come to the United States? While coming to America was good for economic pursuits, there are also many more factors that come into play. Like most immigrants, a big reason for their move is conflict within the country, and it happens to be at this time that Polish people were facing political conflict, and many Polish immigrants were trying to escape said conflict. Between 1795 to the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, there was no Polish state. However, Poland was split into three provinces: the German, the Austro-Hungarian, and the Russians. Poland was not the only Poland did not only consist of Polish people, but also Germans, Jews, and Lithuanians. The Polish immigrants in the United States shared two common traits. Polish was their mother tongue, and they were Roman Catholics. What social and cultural organizations did Polish people create in the United States to help them adjust? At first, Polish people weren't accepted by American society, although most immigrants at that time were not completely accepted. However, Polish immigrants were the primary targets because they were Roman Catholic, while Americans were Protestants. Not only did the religion clash, but there was also a huge language barrier. This barrier made it hard for Polish immigrants to find good, well paying jobs, and also made it hard for the Americans and the Polish people to unite or come to agreement. Because of this, Polish immigrants and few other immigrants groups were forced to make their own countries within America. These so-called countries were called ethnic communities. These communities were committed to keeping the cultural and religion alive while in America, and also a means of creating a safe place where other immigrants could survive. In the Polish community, they created their own newspapers, social clubs, and even went as far as creating a Polish radio and television station. They also built many Roman Catholic churches all over the place to have a place of worship. Schools within these communities were taught mainly in Polish. However, some of the lessons were taught in Polish and English so the kids could learn a little of both language. There were many Polish communities in a variety of places such as Kraków, Wisconsin, and Winlow, Minnesota, to Buckett in Chicago, and the Cleveland Fleets Avenue. There are also many Polish communities in our area such as Chicopee and the Indian Orchard. Although Polish immigrants were loyal to Poland, they still thought of themselves as citizens of the United States. Members of Polish ethnic groups that became leaders. One leader is Krzysztof Miłosz. He was an American Polish author, translator, and critic. He received a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1980. He was originally from Lithuania, the Russian Empire, but his parents had to leave because there was a conflict with communist regime that came to power after World War II. Miłosz's writings were written in his native language, however, were translated to English, and he also wrote English writings. Specifically, in Miłosz's poetry, he brought to life the central issue of the impact that history can have on a person or a certain group of people. He also talks about how people in a ruling world will turn to religion or a spiritual side in order to survive. Another person is Leo Christie. He was a political leader. He was elected chairman of the Socialist Party of America and helped lead and organize strikes with other Polish immigrants. He fought for equal treatment with the Knights of Labor for workers because him and his people weren't treated with respect. Big businesses thought they could easily replace immigrants, so they weren't seen as humans and were often just given a number that created this sense that the workplace was a prison. He greatly impacted the history of political radicalism and paved the way for how future Polish people and immigrants in general will be treated. What effects did Polish immigrants have in the United States? When Polish immigrants came over, they were target because of their religion. At the time, the United States were Protestant and Polish people were Roman Catholics. Because of this, Polish people opted to make their own communities with their own preferred meanings. This means that not only did they have to make their own new churches, they also brought over a mass majority of people who were Roman Catholic. This means that slowly over time, Catholicism started to gain roots within American history. Protestants also found the designs of churches to be alluring and decided to incorporate them into their churches. As well, for an economic impact, there was the fact that Polish immigrants were considered cheap labor. This means that mass majority of Polish immigrants that came to America found jobs within factories and made the lives of big businessmen easier because they didn't need to treat them equally at the time, meaning that they could give them brutal work and still be able to pay them nothing. One specific thing that Polish people made sure they brought over was their culture. Their communities were built around their home. They wanted to have everything that they could that consisted of back home.